At a quiet checkpoint near the US-Mexico border, tucked between cold steel containers and the harsh glare of floodlights, a convoy of American milk trucks was stopped. Not for any administrative violation, not because of contamination or hygiene issues. All the paperwork was in order, every document accounted for. Yet the shipment was still turned away, silently, without clear explanation. And then, after hours of being stuck in the stifling heat with nothing but an old news broadcast looping on the radio, a short message finally came from the Mexican side: does not meet ethical standards. Just a few words, but they hit the American dairy industry like a cold slap. A quiet slap. No outrage, no chaos, but one that carried weight. No immediate protests were made, no fiery press conferences from Washington, just numbers starting to dip, quietly but steadily. In the first 3 months of 2025, U.S. dairy exports to Mexico dropped nearly 10%. It might not sound like much, but when translated into millions of gallons, thousands of farms, and countless jobs lost, that rejection no longer seemed like a small gesture. Even more striking was what happened at the same time. Canada, long considered conservative and strict in agricultural trade, recorded a 31% increase in dairy exports to Mexico. Same market, same product category, two neighboring countries with similar climates, yet two completely different trajectories. Perhaps the issue wasn't about output, technology, or pricing anymore. Perhaps it was something deeper, something no Excel sheet could capture. The U.S. dairy industry has long been used to leading the pack, equipped with the most advanced technology, the largest production scale, and the strongest operational capabilities. But what they might be losing now is trust. Trust from consumers, from partners, from nations that once saw the U.S. as a model to follow. Not because the milk has gotten worse, but because of something else. Something less often spoken about, yet increasingly vital in global trade. Ethics. Because today, people don't just want to know if a product is clean or safe. They want to know, were the cows treated humanely? Were the farmers paid fairly? Was the production process harmful to the environment? And can the journey from pasture to glass tell a story of decency? Mexico didn't say it outright, but their actions spoke volumes. They are redefining the meaning of quality, a definition tied to humanity, to ethical standards, and to accountability. And perhaps this isn't just about milk. It's the opening signal of a new trade order, where ethics are no longer a side note, but the standard, where meeting standards is no longer just a technical checkbox, but a question of values and principles. And this may very well be the beginning of a profound transformation, where ethics quietly become the world's new trade standard. The 20th century was the era of productivity, of assembly lines, of more, faster, cheaper. But the 21st century poses a completely different question. Where does this come from? How was it made? And what was sacrificed in the process? Consumers are no longer satisfied with hastily slapped-on labels or hollow advertising slogans. They're searching for the truth behind the product. Every bottle of milk, every loaf of bread, every pill now carries a new demand. A demand for ethics. This shift hasn't been loud, but it's been relentless, like an undercurrent. After the pandemic, the climate crisis, and a string of global food scandals, the world seemed to pause, to look deeper into the relationship between people and the supply chains that feed them. And slowly, concepts once seen as luxuries, like animal welfare, farmer equity, and environmental impact, began to seep into the shopping carts of everyday families. In the dairy industry, two seemingly technical terms highlight this transformation: RBST and SCC. RBST, a growth hormone banned in Canada, Europe, and many other countries, is still used on many farms in the US. Its purpose is to increase milk yield per cow. While there's no definitive proof that RBST harms humans, numerous studies show it raises the risk of mastitis, causing cows pain and shortening their lifespan. For many consumers, especially younger generations, the use of RBST isn't just a scientific matter, it's an ethical question. Should we push an animal beyond its natural limits just to maximize profit? Then there's SCC, somatic cell count, long considered a key indicator of herd health. Canada caps SCC at 400,000 cells per milliliter, with most farms keeping levels far below that. In contrast, the US allows up to 750,000, nearly double. This figure reflects more than regulatory differences. It signals how much care is given to milk quality and animal welfare. For today's consumers, this isn't just a technicality, it's evidence. Evidence of care or negligence, of ethics or pure profit. And it's precisely these seemingly small details that have led to a massive shift. Mexico never issued a ban, nor did they hold press conferences to declare their stance. They simply began adjusting their orders, quietly shifting their imports from the US to Canada. Yet that move spoke louder than any warning. It said one thing clearly: they're willing to pay more if it means supporting a supply chain that is more humane and transparent. The world is entering a phase where ethics is becoming a form of currency, not in paperwork, but in the daily choices of millions of consumers. And when a country like Mexico, once one of the top markets for American milk, starts turning away simply because of values, it's no longer a fluke, it's a signal, a wake-up call. But not everyone sees that signal in time. In US dairy states like Wisconsin, Iowa, and New York, where milk is the lifeblood of local communities, Mexico's quiet shift is hitting like a cold wave. Every canceled contract, every rejected container isn't just a line on a spreadsheet. It's a farm forced to shut down, a family compelled to sell their land, a child who has to give up the dream of going to college. And that's when we enter a more bitter reality. The cost of lost trust isn't measured in dollars alone, but in the future of the people behind every gallon of milk that's no longer chosen. Across the vast lands of Wisconsin, where the grass once stretched out like a lush green carpet, now stand half-closed iron gates, empty barns, and motionless milk tankers parked in silence. No alarms blared, no sudden events struck, no natural disaster rolled through. It was simple. The orders just stopped coming. When Mexico, one of the largest importers of American dairy, quietly pulled back, the first thing to vanish wasn't numbers on a balance sheet. It was trust. For every $50 million lost in dairy exports, about 1,500 direct and indirect jobs disappear. And in the first quarter of 2025 alone, the damage reached nearly $90 million. That's not just money. It's sweat, hope, and entire livelihoods built over generations. It's the dreams of farm kids yearning for a better future through college, suddenly blurred by fears of losing their homes and land. The loss of trust always begins with small things. A long silence from a customer, a doubtful look from a consumer, a report that arrives without a congratulatory note, and then it spreads, quietly, subtly, like rain seeping into the roots of a tree. When people no longer believe you're acting in good faith, even if you're still following the rules, the game has already changed. No penalties, no laws broken, you're simply no longer chosen. In contrast, at that very moment, Canada, once criticized for being too closed off from the global market, began to earn newfound respect. Even with milk prices 10 to 20% higher and a far smaller production scale than the US, containers stamped "Product of Canada" were welcomed in the most discerning markets. From Tokyo's supermarkets, Berlin's grocery aisles, to the wholesale markets of Guadalajara, the name Canada has become associated with something the world is desperately seeking: peace of mind. And that peace of mind isn't something you can buy. It's built over time, through transparency, commitment, and unwavering values that don't bend for short-term profits. When today's consumers are willing to pay an extra 30 to 60 cents per gallon just to know a cow wasn't overworked, a farmer wasn't exploited, and the environment wasn't poisoned, then ethics has clearly become a core part of a product's value. Not an add-on, the heart of it. There are farms in the US that were once shining examples of pride, equipped with cutting-edge technology, massive output, and impressive growth rates. But now, those very traits have become emotional barriers in the eyes of modern consumers. When milk is stored in cold, stainless steel vats, extracted by robotic arms along a wordless assembly line, no matter how clean it is, something is missing: connection. Today's consumers aren't just drinking milk. They're seeking a relationship with the cow, the farmer, and the journey from nature to table. While the US is beginning to realize that some values can't be industrialized, Canada, with its slower, often criticized conservative approach, is stepping into the spotlight. Not because they moved faster, but because they never strayed from the path of integrity. And now, as the world shifts direction, that very path is leading them to the front, a journey against the wind. but one that reaches the destination. From the snow-covered fields of Ontario to the small family farms of Quebec, the story of Canadian dairy is being rewritten, not through volume, but through trust. There was a time when Canada was seen as a laggard in the global agricultural trade. While free trade agreements were being signed with great fanfare, while the US and many Western nations were dismantling tariff barriers, Canada held firmly to its supply management model, tightly regulating the production of every liter of milk, every egg, every slice of cheese. Many viewed it as rigid, a barrier to innovation, a relic of protectionism unfit for the era of globalization. But time has shown, some values, if held long enough, eventually become what the world comes back to seek. Amid a global crisis of trust in food, when consumers began to question everything that seemed too perfect, too cheap, too fast, Canada emerged as a steady anchor. No flashy campaigns, no loud marketing, just quiet consistency. They didn't just sell milk, they sold a story of trust. In Canada, every gallon of milk can be traced back to the very cow that produced it. The farm's name, care procedures, antibiotic use, all transparently documented and monitored by independent third parties. Consumers don't have to guess, they get to know. And it's not just about transparency. Canada also makes clear ethical commitments. No RBST, the controversial growth hormone, minimal antibiotic use, strict animal welfare standards, and a strong push toward renewable energy on farms. These practices don't make milk cheaper. In fact, they often make it more expensive. But they give consumers the sense that what they're buying is clean, not just physically, but morally. The supply management system, once criticized for distorting the market, has now become a shield that keeps Canadian dairy stable in times of global upheaval. There are no mass farm bankruptcies due to plummeting milk prices, no milk dumped in fields from overproduction. Over 10,000 small farms in Canada continue to operate, continue to support tens of thousands of families, and can continue to deliver consistent quality because they're not racing for volume, but focusing on quality and long-term sustainability. That very slowness in a world moving too fast has become a strategic advantage. From Japan to France, from Germany to Mexico, even the most demanding markets are turning to Canada. Not because it's cheaper, but because they don't want surprises. They don't want their morning glass of milk to carry with it unease about the environment, ethics, or murky origins. And quietly, Canada, once dismissed as conservative, has become a new model. An agricultural system that doesn't produce the most, but earns the most trust. But while Canada is steadily becoming the pioneer of a new production mindset across the border, the United States, once the world's milk-producing powerhouse, is grappling with a painful paradox. Its advantages in scale, technology, and speed have become burdens in an age when people crave decency and connection more than productivity. And that is where the next chapter begins. Across the vast prairies of America, once hailed as the dairy barn of the world, the machines still run day and night, without pause. Robotic milkers operate on schedules timed down to the minute. Feed trucks roll through corridors lined with thousands of cows, neatly arranged in enclosed barns. Everything runs perfectly, efficient, sterile, technically flawless. And yet, something has been lost, something no assembly line can replicate: emotion. America once prided itself on being the pioneer of agricultural industrialization. The numbers were staggering: millions of gallons of milk produced daily, billions of dollars in annual exports, tens of thousands of workers powering a vast, complex system. But now, in the eyes of global consumers, what was once an advantage has turned into a gap. A glass of milk, no matter how perfect in microbiology or nutrition, if it can't tell a story, remains just a cold product, as sterile as the stainless steel that encases it. Today's consumers are changing. They no longer just ask, how much protein is in this milk? They want to know, was this cow raised on open pasture or kept in confinement all day? They don't just read the nutrition label, they look for certifications. No RBST, no antibiotic residues, no labor exploitation. And above all, they seek a connection between the milk and the natural world, the pasture, the sunlight, the farmer, and the values behind the production process. But in a system as massive as America's, that very scale creates distance. The farmer's hand is no longer present on the udder. The creak of the barn door at dawn has been replaced by motors, monitors, and digital dashboards. The human connection to nature, once the soul of agriculture, has gradually been replaced by algorithms and KPIs. No one doubts America's production power. They could feed the world if needed. But that variability to produce everything has led them to lose what might matter most, the reason to be chosen. As the world starts to seek values beyond optimization, values like transparency, ethics, sustainability, the fact that America can produce twice as much no longer carries the same weight. Because then the question shifts from who can make the most to who can make it right. More importantly, this massive machine is not easy to pivot. Once an entire system has been optimized for speed, output, and profit, turning back towards strict ethical standards isn't just expensive. It faces resistance from within. It's not easy for a multinational corporation to accept lower output just to let cows roam free. Nor is it simple for thousands of large-scale farms to abandon RBST when domestic laws still permit its use. And in that context, the US finds itself at a crossroads: maintain the current model and continue losing trust in high-standard markets, or pivot and face internal resistance and massive restructuring costs. This is the price of moving too fast, too far, without stopping in time to see which direction the world is heading. America isn't lacking in technology, or resources, or brilliant minds. But perhaps what it is lacking is a story that reconnects the consumer with the producer, a story that can turn a glass of milk into a symbol of care instead of a product of a cold machine. And if they don't rediscover that story soon, then no matter how much milk they produce, fewer and fewer people will want to listen. The world is changing, not through loud revolutions, but through quiet choices made every day. A shopping cart pushed through a checkout line, an order canceled without explanation, a country shifting its imports without issuing a single statement. Yet behind these seemingly small actions lies a profound transformation. From trade driven by cost to trade guided by ethical value. We've long been accustomed to asking, how much can we produce? As if more, faster, and cheaper were all that mattered. But that question is no longer at the center. Consumers now want to know, how was this made? Who is behind it? Did someone have to lose so others could gain convenience? And what did the environment have to sacrifice for this product to exist? In this new order, ethics, transparency, and decency are no longer secondary values. They've become a form of currency. A currency that can't be traded on financial markets, but one that determines the true worth of a product in the eyes of the consumer. A currency that can't be printed, but can be earned slowly through every small, responsible decision. Mexico's story isn't just about milk. It's a clear reflection of a new attitude in global commerce. When a nation is willing to turn away from a longtime partner, not because of declining quality, but because shared values no longer align, that is a serious reminder for all of us. The world no longer accepts products that are only technically good. They must also be humanly good. And when names like Canada, the Netherlands, and New Zealand, countries that don't top the charts in output, are increasingly chosen by the world's most demanding markets, it's no coincidence. They chose the long road, slower but more sustainable. They didn't just produce, they told a story that others wanted to believe in, walk alongside, and support. For the US, and for any country that has prided itself on production power, perhaps it's time to shift the focus from how much we make to how we make it. Not abandoning technology, but reconnecting with the land, with people, and with the values that were left behind in the race for optimization. Because in a world yearning for kindness, the strongest weapon isn't scale or speed, it's trust. And maybe what Canada is proving, with every transparent gallon of milk, every farm treated like a treasure, is exactly what the world needs. A reminder that kindness is never out of style, that transparency is strength, and that what begins with trust will always return as a well-earned reward. What do you think about Mexico's decision? Is ethics truly becoming the new currency of global trade? Leave a comment below, because your voice is part of building a more responsible consumer world. And if you find insights like this help you better understand the quiet but powerful shifts shaping our world, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. We'll continue to bring you stories, not just to keep you informed, but to inspire reflection and growth in a world where every small choice can lead to big change. See you in the next video, where every glass of milk is more than just food. it's a message.